Ladies and gentlemen, when Elon Musk purchased around 9% of Twitter, I said on this channel he's going to buy the whole thing because they're going to use that platform, that dystopian nightmare, that Tron for apoplectic. Remember the movie Tron? Remember the movie Tron where the video game developer is catapulted inside the video game? He's like trying to get out. It's like the movie Tron for apoplectic, but always morally superior, absolutely highly educated and wonderful liberal Democrats. It's their church. It's their place of worship. It's their mirror, mirror on the wall. They look, they go, they get retweeted, they go into that digital scourge upon humanity, and they preach and condemn and give sermons and hide behind fake profiles and try to torment others while they accuse Trump of being mean to people. And they're just trying, what they've done with Twitter is the following. It started off as a public square, and then they said, well, it's a private company. They can silence and marginalize and suppress discussion and ban and suspend anyone they want, including the New York Post. Because you know what? Another country wants you to know that Hunter had obvious, clear pay-to-play schemes in his emails pointing to President Mashed Potato Brains. We can't know that, or candidate Mashed Potato Brains at the time. So the New York Post is suspended, but BuzzFeed is definitely not suspended when they're publishing a Steele dossier that is literally purchased by Trump's direct political rivals and is completely fabricated, full of fantasies, probably fantasies that Bill Clinton thought of. Oh, don't bring me into bring me into this. Look, Elon Musk is going to bring back Donald Trump on Twitter. And he's going to bring back any dissenting viewpoint, any expert that fell outside of the mainstream, that got his or her account suspended or kicked out of Twitter. Everyone is going to have a say. Now, people who use words in a manner that is already prevented through existing laws. So when morally superior, wonderful liberal Democrats say, oh, well, you're going to allow anyone on there? I mean, my God. There are laws protecting the country and human beings from speech or from words that could harm others. Those laws already exist. The reason Twitter suspends people is because anyone who falls outside of the wonderful liberal mainstream consensus, which is completely fabricated, because anyone who falls outside that consensus is banned, suspended, marginalized, silenced, experiences severe economic consequences. So you have frightened and bullied and coerced people into believing your idea of what, I mean, we could talk about a whole bunch of topics. When they say the mainstream or consensus, what morally superior liberal Democrats think is the mainstream, when they say, well, Trump or Elon Musk, they're not mainstream thought. And by the way, the people who claim to be against the mainstream, there are liberal pundits with 1 million to 4 million subs or 800,000. They are the mainstream. They claim to be against the main. Criticizing the Democratic Party, quote unquote, doesn't mean you're actually outside of the manufactured, fabricated consensus. Hit subscribe to this channel right now. I have a very important segment on the stock market crash channel. That's below in the pinned comment. Right after this segment, go to the stock market crash channel. We're going to have a devastating stock market crash, which is very likely one of the reasons why Elon Musk wants to purchase Twitter. But hit subscribe to the stock market crash channel below in the pinned comment. And also the Indict and Imprison 45 channel. Hilarious comedy, satire. That's below in the pinned comment. I pretend to be the wonderful, highly educated person that thinks that Trump is guilty of everything under the sun, as the lieutenant governor of New York is indicted, a major Democratic donor is indicted and arrested and imprisoned for decades for committing heinous crimes. But hit subscribe to that as well. But definitely a stock market crash channel below. To my new Patreons, thank you. I'm going to try to also venture out into new platforms aside from Patreon if you want to support my work. If there are platforms below that you suggest, let me know in the comments section. He's going to let Trump back on Twitter, if anything, so he could say, hey, you know what? Free flow of ideas. And have the civilization will crumble. Here he goes, civilization will crumble if people don't have more. Okay, that's a different one, he said. Elon Musk said he wants to buy Twitter for the future of civilization. And he basically said, a broadly inclusive. Okay, my strong intuitive sense is that having a public platform that is maximally trusted and broadly inclusive is extremely important to the future of civilization. What he's really saying, he believes this, but what he's saying also is they're going to use this platform against me because I fall outside of their fabricated, manufactured consensus on everything. When people say, well, these organizations, these government bodies or organizations or, let's just say expert organizations. See, I mean, I definitely have to watch myself on YouTube as well. But what he really means is there is a fabricated, contrived consensus. A consensus is reached when dissenting opinions, when dissenting viewpoints are proven to be false, not silenced. The reason that Twitter silences dissenting views, even if they're extreme, like let's say a viewpoint that is so extreme and absurd or insulting has a platform. At the end of the day, the majority of people are not going to listen to that person, okay? Twitter silences that person, but Twitter also silences and suspends the individual who has broad public trust, or the trust of maybe half the population, or can express a viewpoint that is contrary to the quote-unquote fabricated mainstream or consensus, but because that viewpoint resonates, makes sense, is backed up by fact, they want to say, well, here's a rebuttal. We're going to actually ban and kick out this individual for blasphemy and heresy. So they've lumped extreme, horrible people with very highly educated experts and intelligent, critical thinkers who perhaps say, hey, wait a second, that's not true. This is actually not what you believe. Or what's happening is not what you believe. Or so you can't have a society function where dissenting viewpoints are ostracized and kicked out of discussion. This is why we have record highs in inflation. Because what happened was Democrats said, we have to, and media and experts said, we have to end economic activity. Well, when you do that, because usually, you lose a major conflict. No country in the world has ever, civilizations have never, on their own, this has never happened in human history, never on their own, ended economic activity. Just for a prolonged period of time, because experts told them to do so. Well, that caused the inflation, directly caused the inflation, the energy prices to go through the roof. We're heading into a recession, and of course, the governments and the Federal Reserve and central banks pumped $10 trillion into the economy. But I explain all this in my Federalist article. I'm just giving you an example. Read the Federalist article below, predicting the stock market crash. We're having a devastating stock market crash, unfortunately, within the next 6-7 months. But Elon Musk knows that's just one example of how the highly educated have run this world and this country into the ground. When they were writing articles, it's too soon, it's too soon. Trump wants to open up, it's too soon. What they're saying is, you know what? sorry, we have to end economic activity. Might hurt Trump politically, but you know what? It's the best thing for the economy and for our lives. And oh, and by the way, it opened up a Pandora's box of endless economic problems. And the decision, I mean, I'm spending a lot of time. That's just one example. Okay, there's numerous examples. When you prevent Trump from speaking, you grow his movement even more. But also what you do is, the sacred cows, the liberal sensibilities that are defended and propped up and bolstered by silencing others, they're not really like Democrats. Morally superior, highly educated liberal Democrats don't really have ideas that make any sense. Okay, even liberals were moved towards. Let's see how I can say this in a friendly guideline. It was very difficult to obtain a firearm all throughout the past 2 years. Why? Because liberals were afraid. Because crime and chaos and uncertainty was everywhere. So first-time owners, the applications, the process, that went through the roof. The ideas that bolster the wonderful, morally superior liberal Democrats don't work. When confronted with obvious, obstacles like crime or, uncertainty in society, they then become conservatives. And they then say, okay, well, I need a first-time purchase. Then they adopt the Second Amendment. I'm speaking in roundabout terms, but that's what I do. That's how I do things. There's a lot of examples, okay? You could look at, like, President Obama, for example. This is on the left. They'll say, oh, what is that even? Oh, that's so lame. It's like, well, no, he purchased property, God bless him, as he should, in the Hamptons, beachfront property. He's not worried about sea levels overtaking his mansion. Not for decades. Not for 100 plus 200 years. Does that mean climate change is not important? No, climate change is important. But you don't transform society immediately when you're not ready, when you don't have the technology to do so. That's where Elon Musk comes in. But see, again, you have like the ideas that these people, I was a liberal Democrat my whole life. The ideas don't work without Twitter suppressing any dissenting viewpoint. And then they say, oh my God, this extreme individual, he's so horrible. It's like, well, you have left-leaning pundits who evoked the same views on the same tragedies and massacres in a different way, similar views, but they're actually then now hired as contributors to left-leaning publications. And so you have immense hypocrisy. But Elon Musk knows they're going to use this platform against him to silence him. So he's going to allow Trump, and he's going to allow a whole bunch of people who have been silenced. And then they're going to say, you have to understand how Democrats think. They say democracy must be protected by preventing people from speaking. Think about that for a second. Democracy must be protected by preventing Trump from speaking. Do you understand how absurd? Only an imbecile would believe this, but you have tens of millions who are like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. Protect democracy by preventing people from speaking. The ideas, there was one YouTuber who made this, I was watching a debate, he made this absurd claim that, well, you know what, if you tell people to poop in a pool, that then a whole bunch of people will start pooping in pools. It's like, no, I wouldn't. You'd have to have problems in your cranium if you heard, hey, you know what, start pooping in a swimming pool. And then you do so simply because somebody told you to do so. Okay? Then they say, well, you have an obligation to say good things. Nobody has an obligation to say anything. The merits of an argument always win. The argument itself, or what you're saying, if it makes sense, if it resonates, if it's based on fact, will always win eventually. Or it will lead to ruin. But that is something that, like, generally it's not going to lead to ruin. Or generally, I'm thinking of, like, historical context. But that's more of, like, the arguments of an individual win out because of the merits of the argument, not because they have a platform. So you can platform anyone. the arguments, if what they're saying is nonsense, what they're saying will remain nonsensical. You cannot elevate an argument by silencing others or dissenting viewpoints. All you'll do is perhaps keep the argument going or keep the viewpoint or ideology going until it just runs out of fuel, because you can't suppress any more people. And people then realize, you know what, we might not be able to say anything, but you know what, in our minds, we totally reject that viewpoint. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, he's going to allow Trump back onto the platform. Trump is, I think that's actually a negative in a way. In a way, it's a negative. It could be a negative, but it could be it's a negative if it's dominated by Democrats. If platforms are literally dominated by Democrats, then it's negative. However, it's a good thing, very good thing for both Elon Musk and Trump if the platform is a platform that allows free speech. Give me your thoughts below. Hit subscribe.